Good morning, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. I found purpose and cause to put another video up, primarily because I'd made a mistake and I wanted to come back and resolve the problem and tell you about the mistake. It's not always easy to get to a point of understanding like that. I've had these issues with what I'm doing here. None of it's in English. It's not an instruction manual as such. It's not something you can read other than understanding the message within the pictures. This Egyptian parchment, when I said the irregularity here is related to the speed of rotation of the globe, that won't be wrong. But where I was wrong was I suggested to you that was us and we were going to get a build-up of ice and snow on the highlands around the equator because of the moon moving in and out. Once we stand with a straight axis, that is the way they achieve summer, winter, spring. They move the moon to cycle the sun and move it closer and further away. And that is how we get the weather changes. So everything on the planet doesn't die, including all the food we eat, including all the animals. If it isn't done, everything would die, and we would die out with it. So that's why, like I said, we have their help. Having rethought this process, like I said, sometimes making a mistake is actually a good thing because it actually makes you rethink and look from another angle. And then you understand not just that, but you understand something else as well that was even equally, if not so, more important. I would say that we are being told here, this is where the water gets put back on the planet on Earth. Right? So in other words, we start having running water again within this period. Where we start to see this, okay, where we start to see this happen and the irregular steps, I will show you it's from the initial movement from the outer ring to the inner ring. If I then bring up this again and show you that in this we're being told with the E here that this is the end of the cycle. This is the outer ring, so we're beyond Mars by 40 million miles here, and these are the movements back in from the outer ring to get back into here, and our inner ring of rotation. And that this is where we are seeing the recorded irregularity in rotation, quite deliberately so, and it's them doing it because they need to. The situation here, when we get on the outer ring, Earth is laid flat. That is 1,000 years. At this point, when this is happening, the South Pole is pointing directly at the sun here, our South Pole. It points for 1,000 years like that before this event, which is then used to stand the globe up. This event is used to stand the globe up, but it's not slowed it down. We've still got a 10-hour day here by the time we get to the end of this cycle. So it's actually been going very quickly in rotation from the outer ring, which is the problem. The further you go out, the faster it goes. The mass is twisted quicker, both on its axis and move through space twice the speed as well. But a 10-hour day is what we're seeing here. So we're seeing a very, very high speed. This is where we are slowed initially, and this is where I see that we are seeing the paces in the, as I showed you in the parchment, this is where it's happening. This is the irregular speed. When we're at this point here, in the outer ring, Earth is in this position. It looks like this. This is where it was. Now when I say to you that they say to us, they lay the planet over and lift it up to change its direction of rotation. In other words, at this point, Earth is rotating clockwise. It's going around this way. Earth, technically, they don't stop Earth and move it in the other direction. It always spins the way it's spinning now, and it just gets turned around like this. And when I say to you, they lay the Earth over, and that they point, in our case now, what was the North Pole becomes the South Pole during this process, and if they lay it flat like this and now point what was the South Pole towards the sun, this is in plane with the sun. It's on the horizontal plane. We know that because it's the only way it can twist the axis. When we look at Earth in this position, when it has been laid flat, in our instance it's been laid with the south pole laid flat and pointing towards the sun. Okay, so in other words, when we are sitting in this position and put on the plane, we are on the horizontal plane here, and when we're on the horizontal plane we know we are because we've managed to tilt the axis or the planet over like that, and the only way that can happen is within the horizontal plane because it's got a hold of the core of the planet. It allows that to happen. What I'm seeing is when that happens, it is one event and they don't have to do anything to make it go down and sit. It doesn't just sit there and spin around like that. It would appear to be that the mass is knocked, it's knocked out of where it is and it goes down like this, and then it's grabbed by the core. The rotating vertical planes take over as well. But what I'm seeing when this happens, if we went to and had a look at the cycle, and when we're getting knocked in here, so this is where we're being knocked in here, so we've done our first 1,000 years once we've been laid over. What happens here is the pole that's laid over and points towards the sun is always pointing towards the sun, so the rotation is like that on the plane, with the north pole remaining pointing out towards the dark and the south pole pointing towards the sun. When I say that to you, you may say, that's impossible because it would melt all the ice off here. Exactly. Just exactly how much ice it melts may not be as much as you think, because the other half here is in complete darkness for 1,000 years. So the air temperature is what melts the ice off here, not whether it's got sun on it or not, it doesn't matter. It's the air temperature and global temperature, the Earth's air, that melts the ice. These are lessons we're getting told now, which is why we're getting told, to be honest with you, we're getting told lies left, right and centre at the moment, but I wanted you to be aware that that's what's happening. We're being told when it gets laid flat on the horizontal plane and being moved back in, that it sits here like 1,000 years like that, rotating with the south pole pointing at the sun continuously. And what I'm seeing when the planet is moved in this way or moved out, the further it moves out from the sun, the more angle of precession of the planet. So in other words, the more wobble it incurs, the further it moves away from the sun. I would expect that's to do with the speed of the rotating vertical planes that cause that instability. The further it goes away from the sun, the more angle we get on what we would deem as the precession of our planet, in that it wobbles. It wobbles far, far quicker the further it goes out. So when we come back to our parchment now and understand what we're seeing, that these 22,000 years we're seeing on each of these lines are not lines on the plane of the sun, because these contain cycles within them that are unnatural cycles. This point here is 2,000 years in. When we go back and look at our cave picture, this is our first 1,000 years, this is our second 1,000 years. Right, so there's our 2,000 years of the first two men. We are still doing the 10-day or 10-hour day here, so albeit it's moved in, it hasn't slowed the speed of Earth's rotation here. It's rotating on its, or spinning on its axis, and giving us a 10-hour day, so it's still very, very rapid. It is in actual fact these impacts as well, would also start melting ice, as would the laying down. It would certainly remove most of the ice off the southern hemisphere, certainly from a water perspective, I would expect, but not necessarily so, you know. If the water's not going to get colder, it's not going to do that a whole lot either. But anyway, this is where it gets stood up, so it gets laid flat there, stood up here, and this is where the process of initiation of 4,000 year off-plane cycle. I'll do an inserted image now, which is the timing device at the Sacsayhuaman walls in Peru, which is ironically on the very line of longitude that tilted, or thereabouts, or the line of longitude of the impact itself actually. And I said to you in my last video that when we were moving out here, that we were heading to a 32-hour day, because it was the slow cycle we were heading to at this point in time. That also was not incorrect. However, having looked again, I can hear some rain out there, which is very nice. Having looked again, we are looking at the situation here where the 32-hour day, or the 16-hour day, as portrayed in the numbers and speeds of the planet are in actual fact without help. With their help, it's a totally different thing, I would expect. When we look back at the parchment, then I believe that they're telling us here exactly what it is. I want you to look here. You've got 3 of those like that, and you've got 3 of these like this, right? To me, I would suspect we're seeing the hours really that we're really going to get. What we're going to see, I would expect here, instead of it being the 32 hours, with their help, it was 27. And with their help on our cycle, this one here, where it's supposed to be 16, it won't be 16, it will be 21. And it'll be 3 either side of the 24-hour day that we see in our unnatural cycle. The reason I say that is not guesswork. I would expect that the reason why that is the case, if I went back to the image on the cave again and said, okay, well from that point we're standing up and we're now off plane, we're at a cycle 4,000 years long that is doing exactly the same as the cycle we have just finished. At this present point in time that happens, the Earth's rotation on its axis changes in that point. At this point, the Earth is rotating on its axis anti-clockwise, but it's going around the Sun in an anti-clockwise direction, and it changes right there. That cycle puts it back into a clockwise direction and around the Sun, so we're talking about the planet going around the Sun in a clockwise direction. When this is finished, and there's another cycle like that we've just finished, which has made the Earth, which was going around the Sun in a clockwise direction, over the last 6,000 years, the loop is, or the half loop is finished. We come up and we join the plane and we're going in an anti-clockwise direction. So that's what's happened here. But the reason why I wanted you to be aware here is we're going to be kicked off here on a 24-hour day. Sorry, 24. So the first length will be 24-hour day, 25-hour day, 26-hour day, and when it hits the inner ring, the planet is prepared and ready at the right speed. It's doing 27 hours a day with the mass of the Earth and the water inside and the necessary changes to make sure that when it hit there, it was just going to roll in and be pretty smooth. Atlantis was not installed in here, doesn't need to be, but it does here. So as soon as we come back into the plane here, it would have to have had Atlantis, without doubt, installed there at the very same time. So Atlantis still needs to be installed here, and the first 6 men here, this first 2 are on plane with the Sun, these next 4 are not. These next 4 here are the years off plane with the Sun, and we're still seeing the variation here because of that. It's slowing. They're slowing it deliberately here, getting it ready to when it hits the plane. Now those years are the ones in plane with the Sun. Ours is the same again. You know, we've just finished the 6,000 years, so if you went down there, you would then count the 6,000 years here before you know, so that you're in the right spot here, and you've got your 16,000 years left in plane with the Sun, which finishes with the cycle that drives you back out to the outer ring again. I did say that this bloke is pointing around that way. Technically, our sequence starts here. Well, actually, not there. It actually starts here. This is actually where they say the end of the cycle is. So in other words, from this point, we are always, from the second 1,000 years, from this point, we are always spinning in this direction, in an anti-clockwise direction on the Earth. All of them, because we've got to go from there back out here again and do this one as well. The only one notice you do see that the head on these guys, he's walking this way, but his head that way is pointing this way, his head's that way is pointing that way, and same here as well and there. You can see the heads change on these first guys. I think it's just telling you which way the Earth is going around the Sun at the time, at the initial start of the very sequence here. And in this one, would appear to me to be a little difficult to see some of these here. you know, and it looks like he's actually started pointing this way in the end. So like I said, you'll see that there's sequences here that change the direction of the head. It's not changing the direction he's walking. It's just his head. It's a bit difficult to see them, but I'm sure that's what that'll be. And the reason we'll have 3 here is because it'll be 3 one way or 3 the other. I've seen somewhere else a cycle that exists here. It's a 4,000 year cycle going out. So in other words, it's an off-plane cycle like the one we have here, but it's actually on the way out. So it's the sort of first half of this one. But it's not always there. It looks like it's 1 in every 4. And that's why I mentioned that. Because to me, there is a cycle that only seems to be run. It might be when this one, because of the sequence, when this one, the last one, is a slow cycle and not a fast one. That's why I would see it being there, that it finishes this slowly and therefore can do another off-plane cycle on the way out to Mars and move the planet out there to say that it was still livable and the water could still exist, just to let us know that they can still make Mars a livable place for us. I'm going to cross into a little portion here that this is the one part I'm not 100% sure of, because I see this slowing us, and I also believe that it is being used here to create a situation. If I go and look for Tunguska now, I'll just do a search for it. And I'll stop it there. As you can see where it's gone to go into, it's directly above that impact and upwards. So Tunguska's marked this event for us to let me know, in my process it was letting me know that this event was used to slow us, the rotation of Earth down. I also believe it is that event that caused the landmass at the North Pole to be destroyed. It's in actual fact the slowing of the globe, and I would suspect that here we are told, and we have been told, and we've discussed in other videos, that they have the ability, even though Earth crust displacement is a no-go, it just can't happen. The continent itself, because of their skills, they can bore underneath a continent so that when the body of Earth either moves real fast or real slow, the actual continental mass can snap off underneath and rotate. And that I would expect the North Pole was not prepared in the same manner the South Pole was. So therefore the South Pole did not incur the same as the North Pole. And here is where it was sealed off, or as I've shown you in other, I will show you this image. I have shown you this image before as well. I will once again mention Praveen Mohan. I've looked at these in his work along with some other videos as well. A lot of stuff that he's got is very, very pertinent to what I believe we're being told. I believe these are telling us exactly that we have 2 tunnels going in. We've discussed this in the last video, where we put water inside the planet, and that water makes the core look bigger. It breaks the planet or stops the planet from having its speed of rotation very, very quickly accelerated. That the water in the planet, along with a couple of other things we've spoken of, need to happen to have the axis come up straighter, and it needs to be straighter before we get to the plane. I'm certain that's the case. I just wanted to show you that and be aware that that's exactly what I believe we're seeing there. So if we look back at Earth again and say, okay, if in actual fact this has happened and we're going towards a slow, what other lesson are we getting here? We are trying to slow the globe, surely moving that much of a mass off the bottom of the planet. So this is where we are now getting another lesson. We are getting a lesson in planetary physics, the motion of the planet within either 2 bands, vertical, rotating clockwise, or when we are in all of them. So in other words, we're within the horizontal plane and we're within the vertical planes as well. And we're in the mesh planes. It's the mesh planes that always stand the planet up straight. But here is where I believe we are getting that sealed, those holes that were there for the last time to put the water inside the planet or at this end. And the reason they say that is they say when they push it out beyond Mars that it is sitting with a straight axis and laid flat, just like the cycle I just said, for 1,000 years, but it doesn't go for 1,000 years, it goes for 6,000 years, and it keeps going. That's to let us know that once it's laid flat, the rotating vertical planes or the horizontal plane will not hold the planet in place. It'll just keep going out. It just keeps going. As one of the things we're taught. The reason why I bring this up, if you're a physicist or anybody into planetary science, I believe we're getting told something here. The mass of Earth or mass of land or landmass that would have been here that was ejected out, it's not to say the mass left there, it's still there, it's probably scattered all around here and chunks of rock and all sorts of things that would have been hurled out of here. The thing is, what happened though, is with the landmass gone, what's happened? The waters of the ocean have had to come back in and fill here, which would have greatly reduced, at that point, the level of water at the equator. I want to show you one thing. The impacts that we had, that we're told of, okay, so in other words, the ones that we already had, that were the ones that tilted the axis 6,000 years ago. This is one of the impacts here. We know that this one down the bottom, we've gone through this procedure before, that this one is the one that tilted the axis, and this one is the one that stopped it. But I want you to be aware that they stopped the movement of the planet here with an impact just above the equator. The other then drove us out of the horizontal plane of the sun, is the impact, two comets, one that way and that way into the Mediterranean. But once again, look where they impacted the planet, this time not just to stop the tilt, this is to stop the entire planet here getting pushed down at 9,000 miles an hour. Where do they land them? This time they land them above the equator. It was all right on the equator, in this area here, is where they all landed. So in both instances, they've stopped the motion of the Earth by hitting on the equator. That is what we've got to understand. And why? Why is it the equator? They've removed landmass here off the equatorial region in both instances. Both there and here, they've moved rather large tracts of land away from the equator. This is leading up to us, to what we're doing now. That's why I'm saying to you, I'm absolutely certain that is why. And if you look at the equator and go round, how much land is actually on the equator? There's not much, is there? Yeah, right across the Pacific. So really the only two lots of land is here, right? And Africa. They're the two continents, and we've already discussed this Africa here being cut and broken in half, and then moving this landmass here down. So in other words, they can slide the entire part of that continent and move it down this way, away from the equator, and come in here with a big cutter and just cut right across there and move that down. And those start to tilt the Earth up. But how the hell do you move that without creating tidal waves everywhere? Maybe they let the ocean down a little bit first, like I said. With the ocean let down, they may be able to move that slowly. I do not know. All I'm saying is that is exactly what that video looks like it does. I'll show you that video again because there's also something else very interesting in it. Well, I'm just going to kick this video off. This is one I showed you in my last video, which I said was, in my opinion, depicting the continent of Africa here and the severing or breaking off of a greater part of the bottom of southern Africa, or the southern continent, the southern part of the continent here, and that Madagascar was shown over here as another island off the side, and that this was showing us where on the continent, and this is on more than one rock that we've got this, And admittedly, this is not as good an image of Africa as the inserted one. This inserted one is off a rock as well. In actual fact, if I broaden it out a little, you can see it's actually the rock that showed me there were two meteors or comets that created the Mediterranean. You can see Madagascar here. What I wanted you to watch is in here and this black here. Okay, because what you'll see is that'll turn into a native face, like a profile of a native. But in here, watch this. I said to you it was Africa, and when you come down here a little, I'll move so we're not waiting so long, and I'll let you just watch this here as I move the light around. What do you see in here? You'll see a face come up here. There's only one place on earth that has lines. There is only one place on planet Earth where you'll have a line, and that is in Africa. And you can see a lion's face come up in the middle of that. There you get to see a little bit of a profile of another native person. That's why they come out in a black shadow like that. Gives you an indication of what they're like, and like I said, you can sort of see a lion's face in about that area there. I wanted to show you this video that I took off one of my rocks a week or so ago. I almost put this in the last video. I will directly address President Trump, so if you would watch this. I do and am aware, with you having said you wanted to buy Greenland after I got the Prime Minister to chat with you. I'm not supposed to know any of this sort of stuff. I'm not a Masonic Lodge member. I've never been in the Masonic Lodge ever, and I've never had anybody come and tell me the Earth cycles around the Sun were managed. They are, without doubt. And these are the secrets that are kept from you and I by these secret societies around the world. Mr. President, if you would, I would like you to watch this, because I've had people say to me, Brian, how do you know this is not going to happen 1,000 years from now? You know, why is it that you think it's actually going to happen very quickly, and that we're very close, within a year or two or whatever? We've had images that I've shown you before off rocks that are relative to what is happening now. I've also shown you this inserted image here, albeit it doesn't look like the Queen of England from this view. It certainly does from another light angle. I want you, if you would, to keep your eye on this whole page here. And Mr. President, no disrespect intended, you keep your eye on this part here. Okay? Just that little bit there, and just watch what happens here. Because really, it is really quite astounding. Some of the imagery I get off this would have me think it is very, very close to being very close. I mean, I expect within this year. I could be, I know other people that think they've said 2028. I would see that we don't have that period of time. I hope you're just keeping your eye on this portion down here. I do move around here a bit. No disrespect intended, sir, but I would expect that if I was looking at an image of anybody here, they even made your colour hair blonde, sir, and made sure you have a very distinct hairdo, sir. You have most of your hair likes to stay in New York. It would appear your fringe likes to be in Texas sometimes, sir. No disrespect intended. I want you to watch that, but also keep your eye here, because you see the letters PV come out there as well. Okay. Did you see what you saw here? And who you see? There's a person there. Not the first time I found your image on a rock, sir. and I found the Queen. I found incidents that have happened in recent years. We are heading to this, and we are heading to it very shortly. I find it's very, very unusual to get this sort of thing here, sir, when in actual fact you're depicted in as being President of America 10 years before it actually happened in a Simpsons cartoon. I'll just let you know that that's actually not the first one I thought, and I thought, well, if I was going to say that looked like any bloke, I know. The bloke that would look like would be the President of America, Donald Trump. Now, President Trump, if I may, I would like for you to be very well aware of what we're looking at here. And for anybody else out there, I find this might be quite interesting. What we're looking at here, and I strongly recommend you go and look at this. It was on YouTube and I watched it a few days ago. It's called Inside Taiwan's Tech Industry. Very much worth a look, in my opinion. It shows the process of IC manufacture that we have on our Earth at this present point in time, and this is, from what I believe, one of the most high-tech factories. It's a fully automated factory, and like I said, well worth a look at. I wanted to show you that, sir, and I also want you to be aware that this is the way we do things. We print on a flat bed here, right? This is what you've got to realise, sir. The situation here is this is the best we've got, pretty much. When we see this, and when I said I hope your military get behind you, I want your military to get behind you to make sure you're here to do the job to the very end. So until they get here, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about your military getting behind you to try and stop them doing what it is they are coming here to do, because in actual fact what they're coming here to do is manage our planet's entry into the horizontal plane and try and keep as many of us alive as they wish. But it is obvious within their message, the 666 boys and girls and those that seem to think it is okay to drink the blood of a human being or slice up a baby or do such things, that is unacceptable. You have to keep going on that front. I've seen plenty over here, sir, where you are making arrests. I can't see that in my own country. That is a real worry. In fact, I have instead a parliament over here that has passed laws to protect pedophiles that are in our federal government. My God. I honestly can't wait for them to get here to clean up our lot, I can assure you. But what I wanted to come back here and say to you, sir, is I hope the Army, Air Force and Navy of the United States understand that if you think there is a battle here, there is no battle. There is no battle to be had. The defence I am asking for them is to make sure you're here to take. You've got one hell of a speech to make, so when they arrive in Ukraine, they have to sit down and explain such things. They're also going to have to explain the moon landings. I wouldn't fancy that task you have, sir, but you do have that task, providing you're here. So that's why I'm hoping that that be the case, which is why I showed you that image on the rock as well. I want to show you one other thing. This image too, sir, if we look at how it's done, how is it manufactured, how is the rock cut to be able to produce an image where you have a person's face here. I'm shining the light in this instance from west to east, left to right. You've got these two strikes here that are indicating two comets coming down to land where this is. When I move the light, this face changes from a younger person to an older person, taller hat to a shorter hat. This is not done by sitting a rock on a flatbed printer or laser etching like we've seen in the manufacturing processes in Taiwan. These rocks, and the only way they can be done like this is to be aloft, floating and in control within a weightless environment with a laser array around the outside of the things, all around the outside of it, cutting as it's going very, very, very quickly, with expertise and knowledge far beyond anything we can even imagine, and that's just to produce one image on one rock when in reality we've got rivers full of them. whilst we're on the subject, sir, of matter transfer via laser, I would like to show you something, and before I go away from the continent of Africa again, like I said, I would expect the break in the continent here to be across pretty close to the equator. Whether they break beyond here, follow the Congo in, I'm sure the Congo River is in this area, whether they go up the river, and they're talking about tilting that down that way and moving it further this way. I wanted you to be aware of Africa and the shape of Africa and where Madagascar is off the coast here and how it looks there, because I went away most recently for a break with my son only last week and visited a place on the east coast of Australia. I'll go back here to show you where it was that we went and spent a couple of days. And I thought we'd come and have basically we just went in here and had a visit to a place called National Park, which is just off the coast of Newcastle, at the bottom of Lake Macquarie, which is here and about out here, so you can see where I was. I wanted to show you a still photo here. We had a bit of fish here. We got back in the car and drove back over to this side, and I stopped here and took a photo here, and I wanted to show you, sir, what is on the wall on the other side of here. And I wanted to show you this because we've just spoken about matter transfer. The next image that I show you then is going to be taken from the car park here on the end of that road, looking at this headland here. Okay, so we're going to look across that bit of water to this headland over on that side. When I show you this, and I just left Africa showing you what it looked like, and Madagascar, and told you that I have a rock showing the creation of the Mediterranean here with a couple of comets. Are we not seeing Africa here? Madagascar off the coast. I see, you may not see that there, that's fine, but I'm saying you can see things like that all over the world, and people know full well they're there. I've had one sent to me from Tasmania about the incident that created the Himalayas. It's a huge 1100 wide meteor coming up south. From the south it was used to tilt the planet over and push it out to an outer ring of rotation. But basically they say whenever they are laying the planet down, the meteors or comets or asteroids, whatever you want to call them, will always come from the south. They come up and hit it and knock it down. To me that looks like Africa embedded in the side there. It's even shown us where that is, and it's got Madagascar out here off the side of the coast. Now whether or not we are seeing here where this was joined once upon a time, and that maybe a meteor was used at some point in the past to come up the side of Africa to separate the Madagascan from the mainland. That's probably what they were showing us there. I want you to, if you wouldn't mind, just to keep in mind that image there for a second, and that South America, and where our 4 is written in Roman numerals. I wanted you just to remember that that's like that for a second. I will show you the next image. I wanted you now to look at where on the rock we had 4. This is our South American shape here, right? And our 4 in Roman numerals was right there. It's now 17 in decimal. It was an actual fact that's changing to 17 that made me get the rock and put it under the microscope and shine the lights from the side again. And that was when the 2 little round dots we had here. Well, you can see it's just totally changed. It's not 2 little round dots here. This one, the bigger circle showing us was the bigger comet that hit the bottom of South America, that tilted the axis. And the other round circle there that was showing you the one in central. It's easy to see that it's changed, isn't it? Okay, it's very, very easy to see the difference there. If I go back to this one, which is the very same image again, where our 4 is, I want you to be aware that you can see the circle there. It's a circle there, and now from the other angle, all these lines changed and disappeared. I know I've had some very, very unusual things happen at this end of things, but you can see quite clearly it's 4, and yet back here it's the same thing, totally different. But what I do want you to be aware of, even with the 17 and without the other lighting here, there's a crack across here. It's like different colour here in South America than here, whereas on the other one it's not like that. It's very, very easy to see this, even when it was with normal lighting and with the microscope light, you could still see a discoloration here. So if I went back to Google Earth again and said, well, maybe on South America there, we're looking at the same thing, that we're getting told there is also, whether it's both, whether it's one, whether it's all, I do not know, but I would say that we are looking at 2 options, or both. That is, the lowering and moving of this landmass away from here reduces the speed of rotation of Earth. And in doing that, because we're in 2 vertical rotating plane, that stands the axis up like this. And I'm absolutely certain we have to have the planet standing pretty straight by a given point of time. I want to make one note that when I do look at South America, and where this line here goes across here, goes from the pyramids over to Easter Island. This line is the very line that tilted. I will bring it back up again here so you can see it's right on the right where that movement changes direction. It is that line that was tilted, which is why Easter Island's where it is, which is why the pyramids are where it is. It's so that this line here is in actual fact crosses the equator on the very line of longitude that tilted. That is what's being discoloured on that rock now, that part. We're going to look at that rock again, and I'll put it under the microscope. I'll set my PC up here, I'll get the microscope, and we're going to do that together. And the reason we're going to do that together is because we need to know what numbers we've got here now. It went from 4 to 17. One thing about that, if you take 1 from 7, you get 6, and if you add 5 to 1, you get 6. Maybe they're telling us here how long they need to get the situation sorted. I know it's 6 and 6 again, but I just want to, I think that we're probably at a point now where I'll go back and look at that, because I haven't put that rock under the microscope for a while, and I thought we'd do it together. Okay, so that's something I'm going to go and do. I'll get that ready and I'll be back here shortly. I've almost got my other computer and microscope set up here for our next part, but I wanted to mention before I get on with that one more thing, and that was these 2 inserted rocks that I've shown you last week. If we are to perceive that they are in actual fact representative of Cape York itself, which they could very well be. They were both found in Australia. They are both, as I've said in my last video, have marks on them directly related to the Earth's movement around the Sun and these manufactured cycles. They are within what is written on that rock, on both of them. There is only one line, if you look at, I'll circle them, that is the same on both rocks. Both rocks represent the Earth's cycle around the Sun and something to do with it, and there is only one line on both rocks. It's the same. And if I was going to draw it onto the Gulf, as we see here, and come back to the Gulf and say, okay, well, if that is talking about the Gulf, they would possibly be talking about a part of here, where I said it goes deep, very quickly off the coast here. The rest of it, we've got a fair bit of continental shelf. So maybe they're telling us here where they're going to cut. If they're going to move this bit, They don't have to cut cans out and smash a big comet in there and do that. That's more problematic. I don't know how they do it, but they could be saying, okay, well no, what we're going to do is come down here and we're going to cut there and take that and move it down away from the equator to slow the rotation of the planet. I believe that the moon, there was a story, I'll do an insert here, about the moon moving further away and that it actually slows Earth's rotation. But before we move away from there, there is one more matter. If I did a search for Maralinga, for those of you who do not know, Maralinga was a place the British used in Australia to do their nuclear tests in the 50s and 60s. And I'll just press search and then I'll stop it halfway, but you'll watch where it goes. It's gone directly to the line here that is the line that tilted. It's not an accident, because if you go directly up, you get to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I bring that to your attention again to President Trump. I realise that you and I, and many of us were very young children at the time this is going down, so I do understand that. But we are here and we are now, so we've got to deal with what people have left us, unfortunately. If we take a closer look at Earth, in this instance, prior to looking at the rock, and look at what we've been told. So in other words, the Earth is standing now straight, and we have the moon in between Earth and the sun, moving in and out with their assistance on the lines of rotation that it's capable of. We are told that in the other, or in this inserted image. We've gone over this before already too today. When we come back to here, then we realise the other reason why we possibly are seeing land masses removed from the equator is a requirement of water. And the way the oceans move now, they cycle like so. In the equatorial region, once the moon is utilised the way it is not going to be the hottest part of the Earth. So I would imagine if you're going to have a cold band around the equator where it's cooler than the tropics, well then you'll have more ocean currents that are like so, and exist only within each hemisphere because of the chilling of the equator, or the equatorial regions. May also be why they open this up here as well, like to allow for ocean current flow. It might be also why they need to lower here down, so that they've got ocean current flows that they need. They're not getting enough flow through this ocean, so they might need to move this that low that they get substantial flow of the ocean through there. Could be why that needs to be. South America may be the same, maybe they need to open up over here as well. So there could be a lot to do that I haven't covered, but we should keep that in mind as to what is going to happen when we come back in line and in plane with a horizontal plane and our planet stands like this. The other thing I need to discuss is Atlantis. When I show you this inserted image of the water manipulation through sound and the ability of that to grasp water or hold water in a given position, I come back to this very, very simplified image of Atlantis, or an explanation as to what it does or how it works. If in actual fact Atlantis was a device that is strung across the top of the ocean, the purpose and reason for doing this is that the very, very strong, narrow, 200 kilometre wide band of magnetism of the sun, the horizontal band that we are approaching, doesn't just accelerate the planet and do things like that. On a daily basis, because it is so strong and it controls the tides of Earth, it therefore drives daily tsunamis. This is why they put Atlantis across the ocean, so it can grasp more water and hold on the equator more water than the sun can lift. If it was a structure that had a beginning and end, or a continuous structure, a break anywhere is a break everywhere, and therefore tsunamis in every port in the world at the very same time. It would be that quick. Therefore the structure cannot be like that. It would have to be independent structures that work within their own right but coupled. And therefore if you lost one, these would then increase in strength to cover the loss of that in the event it failed. So that's how the structure would be, and it would be a structure like this that was all tied together to a central, communications point. It would also be, I would think, providing it was wide enough, not necessarily tethered on the bottom of the ocean. I don't know that it would need to be. It may be that it might need to be tethered, but I don't know that it would. Just something I'm not 100% sure about as well. But I certainly feel, without doubt, it would not be a structure that was combined, like I said, a failure one place. Anywhere is everywhere. It would be a structure of that type of thing, a string of pearls, if you want to call it that. Sorry about that. My battery went flat, so I had to recharge it before I could get started. You can see I am set up here with my microscope and computer, and I've put my little table here so that we can do a bit live. In the moment of waiting for the battery to charge, I had given thought to something, a question that I rose only an hour or so ago, and that was, how do you move a landmass without creating pandemonium? We're talking huge land masses. I have brought to your attention this inserted image here once again, drill holes, what would appear to be drill holes, many thousands of them, off the west coast of the USA. And we ask ourselves how, why and when. They just appear to be available to be seen now. There are so many things that have done so. When we look at the inserted picture now, and I've said to you before that the 4 circles that you see in this megalith are reflective of the 4 cycles, and that if you look at them, I'll circle these little parts here in red, are in actual fact brake pads. What it's saying to us is that when Earth hits the horizontal plane of the Sun, it needs brake pads. In other words, it's going too fast. It's got to be slowed down, otherwise we have this snap speed, and it's very quick. If we were not without their assistance, we would all be dead. And I gave some thought, now coming back to this image back on the TV, and I quickly just drew this, once again a very crude diagram, I know, but sometimes in simplification of things becomes a better understanding. If we look at the blue line being the ocean level, and say where the red lines are is reflective of 1,000 foot depth of ocean, or possibly deeper. But if, say, for 1,000 foot, just for the sake of the argument, the red lines going from left to right here, if we then compare those and lines drawn like that, they're not meeting out here. This is falling short by however long. And if I had some other substance within these red tunnels drilled like the very same process I've just shown you, close tunnels together all along in a line that go from, say, Cairns all the way to the top of the Gulf, or Cape I should say. So if these were like that underneath the landmass, all the way from Cairns to the very Cape, like that. The green is not there at the moment, just the red. Okay, so we have tunnels cut like this that are filled with whatever substance, or maybe none. Short of the land or the depth of land off the coast, so they could be a given distance in, calculated by the people that spin the planet out beyond Mars and back. We'd certainly be able to do such a thing. Like I said, they could be tubes filled with crude oil, who knows. If then they come along with their 2,000 or 1,000 foot cutter or 1,200 foot wide cutter, turn them sideways as we've already shown you in other videos, and then just cut straight down here. They release the pressure at this end. The ocean rushes in here and breaks apart where it was that it stopped. And it's calculated that when this water runs in here and comes back up here, that in actual fact they've actually floated the landmass on the water because of the water pressure itself. And the pressure build up here from the ocean coming in here and coming back into this area, it is enough pressure just to calculate it to just crack it off and crack what remaining rock there is between the landmass and proper Earth's surface here. I don't know, I would expect that they've probably got that ability. I just thought I'd mention that that would be a way of doing it. So in actual fact it's a suppressed breakage, which is why we're actually getting shown the caverns within the world. There's caverns that are being built like this inserted image here in Russia. It looks like the mountain has been built around the cavern because the rocks are man-made. They're square, they've been finished off and they're within the mountain. The route of access would be lucky if it's 3 to 4 feet. And yet the rocks within the strata that have been manufactured, you can't put them there. The mountain is going around them. It's like the parts of the pyramid that are designed exactly the same way. Or the serapeum, even the boxes in the serapeum. How do you put them there? How can you turn them? How do you get them round? How do you lift them up? They're 40, 50 tons. It's impossible. I would say that we look at that and you'd say, oh yes, but the mass. Put a whole bunch of those holes up here and make that look a lot more massive than what it is. And quite simply, it may very well be just the water pressure itself within the tunnels lifting up and snapping off the very land, or they once again bleed away the pressure here. There is a way that that's what they do. Having discussed now, as we just did, the way Atlantis is around the ocean, we have a problem, and that is that if the device is in actual fact one of harmonic device that runs through electromagnetism or some means of such a thing, we are told that these glyphs here that are, I believe, like I said, in a temple in Luxor in Egypt, I think, but what they represent and what we are told is, oh no, somebody else come and wrote over the top of them and made that a helicopter and that a speedboat and so on and so on. That is once again another misconception and total misguidance. They are in actual fact exactly as they are portrayed, but mostly in the message what we should see here is what we don't see here. And what we don't see here is a tanker. Okay, so there must be a concern with getting one hell of a big chunk of metal close to this device. And therefore, when we look at the severing of South America in the direction we do, I'll show you, when we look at the inserted image now, we see, in my opinion, off this rock, that it appears that they're going to come out from South America, and I thought initially the end of those white lines, one of them comes directly up here, and we found Rio, which is about here, right on that red dot there, Rio de Janeiro, is on the rocks, and we found the man with his arms out above on the mountaintop above Rio. That is also on the rocks. We have had this part of South America discolour on one of those. When those white lines come out of South America, as you can see, this line here, or cut, or movement, may not be one that is relative to mass being moved away from the equator. The reason I bring that up, I've mentioned to you about Atlantis already. Atlantis, it is a device, it sits on the ocean here. Right, so it's going to be right across the ocean. Well, you can't come down here in a big tanker. That's why I wanted to show you those glyphs, or the Egyptian glyphs. You can't come down here with the tanker. I'm actually thinking that this cut here, it may be more relative to actually creating a situation where we can we can transcend between the northern and southern hemisphere, because how else? How else can you get a boat to do such a thing? So what I'm thinking, this may be in actual fact a channel through South America to permit access, so we can actually get a boat down into the southern hemisphere, or vice versa, one going up to the northern hemisphere, because how else do you do it? You cannot cross. There is nowhere on the Pacific Ocean. So if we go over to the Pacific Ocean here, there is not anywhere here where you can have a boat go from one side to the other and cross the equator. It just isn't happening here. Okay, so where are we going to do it? So there are places where you have land here, shallow oceans. This would be possibly the passageway through for crossing the equator in areas like this. But certainly we cannot cross out the middle of the ocean out here. So there is going to be some, like I said, a lot of thought given to what is going to transpire when we actually get to this point. And it's not just that either, it's what we're going to trade. What are you going to trade? You know, you're going to, just say, the difference that we have is when it's now winter down here, it's winter there, and it's winter all over the globe at the very same time. So you're not going to be growing a winter crop here and selling your excess to another country that's in summer that wants a winter crop, because they'll be in the middle of winter growing their winter crop. I would expect that is why we are shown so many of the underground caverns throughout the world, in that we are going to have to become very good at storing crops for ourselves to use, as well as instructing and helping a lot of people. Like I said, they make out, they do not go, and you can easily see why when it is the moon that's got to be constantly moved in and out. It is in line with the sun, and what it does is move in and out closer and gives us summer, winter, spring effect in an arena where there isn't one anymore, because we are standing here with a straight axis. So I just wanted to mention that I would see that cut there, not necessarily one related to mass, but one related to an ability for the northern and southern hemispheres to get passage through that area. We come back to the screen now. Whilst I'm going through this, I might insert pictures as I go along, so when I get to the same part of the rock, and I'll just show you that it is the rock. I have it under the microscope, and I know I have the TV a little bit further away, but with the inserted images I'm sure you'll be able to identify that we are in actual fact pointing to the very same part of the rock. This is part here that I saw as being representative of the Great Australian Bight here in Port Augusta and whatnot. I am an Australian, so it's probably a little bit more identifiable to me than it would be somebody who lived in another part of the world, but it is the bottom, or the Great Australian Bight, the curve at the bottom of centre of Australia. In actual fact, where that dot is pretty much the line of longitude we were just talking of, which was the line of longitude as depicted in the pyramid, which is also drawn off at the bottom of Australia. I'm yet to believe that that one's an actual fact warning us that if there was impacts required, that would be one of them, that it would hit Canberra area or bounce off the coast to go through to Canberra, and that they would come out and land both where those two dots are in South Australia. I don't want to go into that. I wanted to just go through as I move around the rock and check. The thing we wanted was to see whether or not the 4 was still a 4. So I've got to get to the same portion of rock, and this is it here, and I'm going to turn it around slowly. I will actually just stop here just a tad and refocus. I'll insert an image for you now where you can see a man standing up, a little white stick figure. You can see what appears to be a planetary body, or a pink, like a planet or something of that nature. I'll just sculpt we come back to the microscope now. Now coming back to the microscope now, look at that image. There is no man standing there. There's no pink planet or red planet and things. That all just disappeared. I've done this before, but I did want to do that only because I wanted to come back and look at this. So from that point I then go around here, and this is where originally we saw our figure with 4 written there, and that is where we were seeing this image here. Alright? And that was this. I'll refocus that for you, and that is where we had 4 written. You can still see the South American continent part here. It's still the 17 written. I might just move that just a little bit more. The angle is not exactly as I had it in the photo, so I might move that a bit like this. Okay, so we're moving South America around a little bit so we can see where that was written. And I'm going to use the outside light here again and move around and see whether what we see these days. As I move along here and get in a position where I turn the microscope light off and use my external light, that is what I'm using externally to shine a light on the rock to reveal the other things we don't quite see under this type of lighting. What I will do whilst I do so is I will talk, if I can, to and address Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, because like I said, I would expect both you gentlemen are in the positions you are in at this time because you are supposed to be there at exactly the time. I myself am very much a run-of-the-mill person. I am nothing out of the ordinary type of person that would be in your own countries. I am on the other side of the world, and I've fallen into this. 18 months ago, if you'd have told me I was going to put videos up on TV or YouTube or social media talking about how the Earth spins around the sun, I would have asked you to I would have expected that both of you possibly had some sort of mental health issue. However, sirs, I'm the one here doing this 18 months later. So here I am with, and the knowledge I have obtained in the last 18 months, having investigated that was before me, has led me to believe that a situation lie where you may know a great part of what we have discussed. There's maybe some parts that I hope that are valuable, because that's why I'm doing it. And to both of you and every other leader across the world, but you two hold the biggest buttons, so to speak. And a defence of such a thing as human trafficking or human consumption and such things is unacceptable. It is obvious within the message, and I'll proceed. So I'll just have a move around of the light and show you how things go. I would expect, sirs, and I still address you both, if I'm a person to go by, right? So I would say that between the both of you, you have one hell of a speech to make. That's for sure. It's inevitable that is going to happen within your time. It won't be 10 years from now. It won't be like that. It's going to be within the next year or two. I cannot see a situation where it's going to change. I'm doing this very slowly, sirs, so you can watch as I do this, what we see, what happens, and what transpires. It is absolutely miraculous. Yes, I'm not kidding. The technology required to do this and create the visionary that you see by doing this is really an amazing thing. You move the light around and you can get it to a position like this where you start to see the structures that they are building, obviously, to put, I would expect, it looks like they've got to build a portion or part there of Atlantis. They're going to come out of the South America to do so, and that's what this is about. I know I'm doing this not in the darkest room. It would be better on this rock a few times, and there are some very, very interesting structures that come out. But I wanted to show you this again. It is absolutely exquisite. The technology, honestly, the technology for that, for us to see that, is, oh, it's just beyond belief. It truly is. It is absolutely magnificent once you get it in the right spot. And like I said, you can see that I'm back into the same sort of area to reveal the same image. And this is multifaceted laser cutting. I've seen other things like, I'd say, fibre optics, or even a holographic projection, microscopic holographic projection. I have put a rock up that I've shown you that. There is, if you get this in a given spot, you can almost see a person's face there, or his nose down here in this corner. But you see, as I'm doing this, and just slowly, there's lots of ways of doing things. You might even find that if I move this way, you'll pick up another UFO over this side. There is obviously UFOs all over the rocks everywhere. These are billions upon billions of rocks. So I think really, I do not fancy the tasks you have at hand, sirs. You have, especially when we've got to sit down and talk about those trips to the moon and what transpired there, because I would see from what I'm seeing, the only way we leave the surface of our planet is with their approval and guidance and assistance and so on. You are leaders of the most powerful countries in respect of weaponry on our planet. I did say I'm a pretty ordinary sort of fellow living over here in Australia. I'm not a multi-millionaire, nor do I truly seek to be one. I just sort of try and live comfortably and stay out of most people's way with most of it. But what I would say is the following. If I was a person that was to give men of your abilities advice, and I wouldn't necessarily consider myself to be a person that would be in a position to do so. However, over the last couple of years, or the last year or so, maybe I've been put in a position where I can give advice, I guess, in that respect. It's not really advice, it's really, I mean, it's been a really daunting thing. I'm not a religious person, but I've always believed that there was more than walking around on the planet. There are a lot of religious people and religions and faiths of numerous denominations and faiths all over the world. It's a very difficult scenario we are faced with, I would expect. If I can only go on myself, it's really all I can do as far as offering advice in that respect. Is it as daunting as all this was to learn? And it was. It was pretty daunting to learn that I had been lied to about the Earth, how it cycled the sun. And I would expect the way they operate here is they are very, very knowledgeable of an afterlife, without doubt. And which is why they give you guys at the top end of town, I don't mean you two sirs, I mean all the others out there, I would believe from what I see from you both that you're nice men. You know, you've got to be tough, you're at the top, you have to be. But I think you're good blokes. I actually like both of you, so I hope and wish you well in whatever your requirements are. They are going to be one hell of a speech, that's all I can say. And all I would say is this: I have been in a position where I could say the truth. I'm learning the truth in the end. I'm glad I did. So that's about the only advice I can offer you both, is that I am glad I found out. I was not a religious person, but I was a person of faith of something after, and what I have learnt has not detracted anything at all, which is why I would expect it's hidden. A lot of it's hidden because the people that pull us into this 666 mob, which is why we see the number 666 written all through the sequences, are in actual fact the very people that will not tell you the truth, and that's why. So, you know, I would suspect that that's the case. Listen, I think we might finish up there, and like I said, I offer both you gentlemen all my support in whatever you've got to do. I would see an inaction, as I've seen from my own Prime Minister here, on the behaviour of those within Parliament, the protection of those within the House, the parliamentary, you know, pedophile suppression orders they put through our government over here. Just had a request for an investigation of other matters, totally refused again by the police commissioner, but you know, such is life. Like I said, these people will sort that out, I'm certain. So with that, I will say thank you very much, and I would expect, like I said, you fine sirs will have support for the removal of people that have, to this point, found it an acceptable behaviour to cut, draw and quarter children and live their life on our planet by eating the youth that we breed, and that is unacceptable. I will finish up with that. This is Brian Whitten and ET Art. Thank you very much, and I apologise for leaving the video on such a sour note, but it is one, and unfortunately we have to contend with. Thank you. Bye bye.